Hello, dear hearts. Marilyn here with another segment of Wisdom's Way of Learning. Hope you've been enjoying my series presenting the lifestyle learning framework of seasons for natural learning at home that doesn't compromise character. Thank you, Lord. So I'm going to be in two books today. We're finishing up the first book of the series, Wisdom's Way of Learning, called The Biblical Science, Art, and Tools of Learning. And we'll be discussing the learning tools, just the theory of them, beginning on page 93, the 5 learning tools. And then I'm going to shift over to this book. It's the second book of the series, the Unit of Life Learning Model. And I'll be skipping over to page 16, chapter 2 of 4 informal learning activities, so that I can help you see how the informal learning activities of everyday life help your children to develop the 5 learning tools. So that's where we're going to be today. And as I have inspiration, I'll be showing you things from my own children's lifestyle learning to give examples of the principles that I'm describing to you. And if you're watching, anyone watching on YouTube later on after this is recorded, please put comments so I know that you're watching, and let me know what you're thinking, and if you have any questions, you can post them there as well. All right, so we're in Wisdom's Way of Learning, and we're going to discuss the 5 learning tools and the 4 informal learning models that I discovered are very conducive to developing the 5 learning tools in children while they're growing up, without compromising your lifestyle and without adding unrealistic burdens to your children of formal studies. And of course, we go into some of the formal as well. So I'm going to be showing you, in fact, I think I'll do that first. So I had showed you this, the lifestyle learning framework of seasons. This would be the preparing stage, collecting stage. And I'm going to be going right here in this collecting stage. This is childhood, and I would guess around the ages of 8 to 12 years old. Kids have been learning how to read and write, and they can just do more by that time. And so the Unit of Life Learning Model, it contains 4 informal learning activities. That's what this is about, this part of the learning model right here. And if you have a copy of this, you can go along with me. When you look at the framework, you're looking at stages of development. And so in the collecting stage, children at that age, between 8 to 12, are very capable of doing many real life activities. And so I'm placing the 4 informal learning activities right there. In the preparing stage, I have 3 of them, but they don't do a lot of constructing of projects unless it's just crafts. Usually up until 7, 8 years old, they're working on crafts. And so I don't have a lot of projects there, but these are transitional stages. Obviously, they overlap each other, so you don't have to be concerned about what age your children are. This is just a guideline to help you. And then, so all 4 of these learning activities, which I have on this other chart, it's expanded right here. That little piece is expanded for you right here on this chart. And then this piece is expanded again into several different notebook applications. So this reality-based notebook recording, we're going to be talking about notebook methodology. The next time I do this video, I'll expand on the notebook recording and notebook methodology and go through the notebook so that you will see what they're all about. So you can see how we're expanding from the big picture of the whole framework down to just the collecting stage of childhood, which is 8 to 12 years old or so. And then we're expanding that stage into expanding the four learning activities, informal learning activities. And of course, there's two formal ones as well in that stage, of family reading and possibly journaling, to go a little deeper from this reality-based notebook recording. And so then this is expanded again. These are the types of notebooks that are easily produced from your children's learning activities in the collecting stage. All right, and so we're staying on the collecting stage for a few weeks so I can explain it more deeply, more fully, give you way more inspiring examples from my family's lifestyle learning. All right, so we're in chapter 2 of the unit of life learning model, and that is on page 16, which is 4 informal learning activities. Okay, any subject area of interest will require frequent delving into a book's relative to the topic. Nature collections will necessitate the use of identification books, and collections in other fields of interest will require the use of specialized reference books. And so we're wanting some real books and real reference books, building a library of books. As the child's interests grow, it is crucial for the continual development of lifestyle collecting knowledge. So you purchase your own books as much as possible rather than just borrowing them at the library. When children are interested, they'll live in the same books for years, digesting and internalizing what they learn. So I'm just going to give you there's a little inset box in that chapter called Lifestyle Learning Home Library, and there's numerous benefits and blessings that come from developing a personal library, among them the potential ministry of sharing books with others. You know, I collected books for my children's personal libraries, and by the time they married and moved away from home, each one of them had their own full bookcase of books. I still have a lot of their books, the youngest ones, but I gave them books for every occasion. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted reference books, and we went to Barnes and Noble just for fun. You know, the bookstore, whatever store was in the area where we happened to live at the time, and we would just go just for fun, and I'd give them a little budget and they could pick out some books. But for birthdays and Christmas, they always got books. And we also went to the library. They went to the library every week, their whole growing up years. But I wanted them to have good reference books of their own. And when a library is lovingly built, the books get reread many times, if they're novels or if they're biographies, bringing great enjoyment with added benefit for the student of increased memory retention, which is something that my kids did. They lived in books. Now, what I mean by living in, because they were very busy with projects and developing their talents and other things, but living in meaning books were a part of their daily life. When you begin to realize the potential education that can be acquired through the simple reading of real books, their purchase may become more of a priority rather than spending so much on curriculum. I read real books to my children, meaning not textbooks. I read biographies to them, or historical true to life stories not necessarily biography, but true to life stories about a group of people. So you can create sets for your library written by the same author, or several historical biographies about the same individual that are written to appeal to different age levels. And I did that with President George Washington. I did that with Noah Webster. I'm forgetting. I did that with themes, topical themes, Christian biographies of missionaries and evangelists, church historical accounts, diaries, or journals of great people. And when I had something I wanted my kids to know, but they weren't likely going to choose it on their own, that would be something that I would read to them. We had great family reading times, and I wanted them to want to know the content. It wasn't like I was just boring them to death with things they weren't interested in. It's just that they would become interested as I introduced things to them that they wouldn't normally pull out for themselves, because their current interests would draw them to certain topics. And you'll find the same thing there as well. Well, reference books include several versions of the Bible, the concordance, a language handbook, Webster's 1828 dictionary, the big red books like I introduced to you in a previous video about America's Christian history, nature identification books, video and audio tapes, 3 to 4 catalog resources that specialize in real books for the Christian home school. And of course that is different today. You get online, I don't know how you find your things, but it's no different than having, catalog resources. I used NASCO science catalogs, really big, thick science catalogs that were created for teachers to purchase supplies for their classrooms. And we purchased many things through that catalog over the years because my children were really into science. But anyway, so you keep these tools near your reading corner, a globe, a U.S. map, a simple timeline, whatever it is that you're wanting your children to be able to refer to at any given time. You want certain reference tools near where they read so they can look things up that they're encountering in their books. Building a library of books as a child's interest grows is critical for the continual development of a lifestyle of collecting knowledge. And so you purchase your own books as much as you can, and you don't be surprised if your kids begin to make their own, modeling their books after those they spent a lot of time with. I know my daughter did that. My son didn't care about doing that because he just wasn't drawn that way, but my daughter did. And I have grandsons who love to make books today. They're drawn to making books, copying what they have enjoyed reading. Brief versions of insect identification books that may reflect the child's personal collection. My kids loved the eyewitness books, Dorling Kindersley. They're specialized, high-interest, colorful, true-to-life reference books, and each one reflects a different area of interest on which to major. Then the Audubon field guides are a favorite for nature identification, but if nature is an avid interest of one of your children, then stock up on other field guides as well. So we had every Audubon field guide that we could find, and probably that many. Catherine wanted the set when she got married, and I had to begin replacing different ones of it so I could give some to John and some to Dad, because all of them wanted the whole set. Our family uses them regularly even today. The kids look things up as well. The grandkids. But we also had different other kinds of field guides, and depending on the area of interest. For instance, when Catherine was really into butterflies, she had several different field guides having to do with butterflies, and same thing with birds, having to do with birds, because it was such a huge area of interest. John has a field guide on rocks and minerals, geology, and insects, bugs and insects. Oh, I had something I wanted to show you. It's so cute. I found this. I took pictures of it. I found this outside, and I just had to grab my camera and take pictures. We have two bug experts in our family, Jack and Theo. So I'm going to show you a picture of Jack. This is Jack working on dissecting an owl pellet. And I told you that story. This is at my table in our place. And he was so excited because he found an amazing discovery. He called it an amazing discovery, where he found not one, but two fully intact skeletons, one of a mouse and what he thought was a baby mouse, but it wasn't. His mommy and Uncle John both said that it was oh my goodness, now I can't remember it. Very small, very, very small thing. And anyway, but I found, they have these shirts they say bug expert on them, and then they have pictures of bugs, different kinds of bugs. Anyway, so I was outside and I found this little critters. Here's one close up. A spider. Little rock bugs created outside. I just think those are so cute. And here's a close up of the I don't know if that's caterpillar or what. And there's another little critter. They were making bugs. I just think that's precious. And there's a little project. I don't know how long they laid. They're not very long, but it's just a fun little thing that they were doing because they're identifying bugs all the time. They're always carrying bugs around and showing everybody what they are. Anyway, it's fun. So the use of nature identification books is a simple way to begin the habits of reading and referencing, and looking up information to identify something gives purpose for reading. So now my family is mushrooming across the street in the vacant lot, and they found some morels. And oh my goodness, they said they are so good. And I had never tasted a morel, but I'd heard of them. And Catherine cooked them, and they're saying that they taste just like meat. They taste so good. And so they were out there seeing what they could find the other day. And then yesterday, I think it was yesterday, day before yesterday, their family was taken to dinner. Family was out of town and taking them to dinner. And so yesterday morning, Jack comes down and he says, Grandma, the restaurant had stuffed mushrooms and calamari. He was so over the top blessed and excited to be able to have stuffed mushrooms and calamari. And he said, and the calamari tasted like real octopus. And I said, well, how do you know about octopus? Because he's had octopus before, because he was so curious about it. Daddy bought some and had it at the house once not too long ago. And so here he is at the restaurant getting to have stuffed mushrooms and calamari, and he was in seventh heaven. Jack is 5. The little boy dissecting the owl pellet that I just showed you. Oh my goodness. So there he was, and he knows all about these things because he looks them up in identification books as well. He's a mushroom expert. He knows way more about mushrooms than anybody ever really wants to know. And he knows the real names of them and whether they're poisonous and edible or whatever it is and what exactly they look like. He can describe to me exactly how a mushroom grows and the 5 stages of its development, the life cycle of a mushroom. So you see, kids, whether they can read or not, can look these things up in identification books, and they're learning. And then whatever they want to understand, Daddy or Mommy reads to them, you see. And if you keep books handy like that, reference books, when your child comes running in with a special find, you can draw them to the identification books and help them begin the habit of further search and exploration. Before long, he'll be doing it himself. I used to have a big basket sitting right next to the front door with all of our Audubon field guides in it, so the kids could grab them easily. No matter whether we were in the living room or whether they were outside, they could grab them. And they lived in those books. All right, so there's reading and reference books. Then collections is the next activity. And of course, the best way for young children to begin the collection habit is in the form of tangible objects that reflect the interest or knowledge that is being internalized, okay? And so this is your second informal learning activity of childhood, collecting. So here's some ideas for supplies for collecting. The NASCO Science Catalog is where I bought all of mine. Transparent plastic containers of all sizes to have on hand for collections. Ziploc bags of all sizes for collections. Top-loading sheet protectors to keep flat objects in a notebook binder like artwork, letters, maps, even feathers, whatever it is that they're collecting. And this will lead to the collection of data, knowledge pertaining to the subject of interest, and it can be channeled into reading and recording habits. So childhood is a period of time to take full advantage of your child's natural desire for collecting and committing to memory a vast array of facts, information, and knowledge. And I believe that a concrete collection of stuff is simply the outward evidence of an inward mental process. Every academic subject area of life has tremendous collection potential. Like I was just describing about my 5-year-old Jack and his 6-year-old cousin Theo, they do these activities together most of the time. They're together a lot in the afternoons, and they do a lot of nature collecting and finds and naming things together. And they're both really smart and have a vast array of knowledge of all sorts of life science, you see. And so you want to encourage your children toward a subject and objects for collecting that possess some redeeming educational values, such as nature, music, art, geography, like world maps or antique maps, if that's what they're really into, history of communication, transportation, or the history of any topic. And my son was really into bones, and he collected bones. And I've got kids who are into bones now too. Jesse and Sean particularly were really into bones and they loved to dissect the owl pellets, but they also loved to study the human skeleton and skeletons of dinosaurs. And now it's Sammy and Sean are really into the dinosaurs together. Sean's 11, Sammy is 8 next week. And they've been into dinosaurs for a few years now. And I tell you, they can name anything they see. They know what it is. They know the period of history that the dinosaurs lived in. Sean's made a notebook. It's, the inch-thick notebook completely full of all of his own drawings with the names of all the dinosaurs. Each page has its own, and then it tells about the dinosaur. And he's been working on that notebook probably for close to 3 years. And the thing is jam-packed with pages that he created. I should get a hold of that and show it to you, because he did this all on his own, beginning at probably the age of 8, making a notebook like that, because he was so interested in it. You see, they know an awful lot about dinosaurs. They both want to be paleontologists. We don't know how long that will last, but for now, that's what they're really wanting to be. It's a real good activity. These activities, collecting, for them, they do little miniature dinosaur digs, but for them, collecting is they're drawing their pictures and writing the names of them, and they're always in some kind of an app they'll do together to learn about dinosaurs. They get a lot of writing practice that way, and tons of research. They really know how to research based on the parameters that the parents set for them as far as where they can do their research. But they got a library full of dinosaur books. That's what I've given to them every year for the last few years, and mommies and daddies doing the same thing for them. So they have quite a bit of library books that way. And of course, I pass down my kids' books to them as well. So every subject can lead toward the eventual discussion of world thought prevailing in different time periods, the history of man prevailing in different time periods, the world of thought concerning religious or humanistic views, which we have had those kinds of discussions having to do with dinosaurs and everything. So you can have, discussion content is unlimited when your children are learning things. And I always have brought, and so do my kids, they bring whatever interests that the kids are into discussion of a biblical way of thinking about things, you see, so that they're actually, you're shaping their mind in the way you want them to think about things. So a simple place to begin the collection habit is in the area of nature, because this is where we live. Nature surrounds us. And life science is, I think, probably the very first things, areas of knowledge that children are introduced to. And they can be interested in for a very long time. And it leads to other areas of science, the science that is unseen, you see, like the, like chemistry, physics, those sorts of things. And of course, into geology and space and the sky and the planets, and into the laws of nature, laws of creation. There's so many areas of science that children will branch out and overlap into all on their own, simply because they're interested in learning. If they're interested in one thing, you can lead them to become interested in other things as well. And often the interest will lead to them becoming interested in areas that are touching that area of interest. So God's creation is readily available to every homeschooling family. The physical world around us provides many ideas and many areas of interest to children, and ideas for what to do, how to explore them. So even if you have a difficult time envisioning where this will lead, take a step of faith and begin anyway. Unless a child internalizes something, his learning process won't have the opportunity to lead anywhere. No one can use knowledge they don't own, and that's why collecting is so important. Letting your children live in a subject for a long period of time gives them a collection and gives them a permanent possession of their subject. The thing a child possesses today becomes tomorrow's blessing for another. Okay? They can't share something that they don't possess. No one can use knowledge they don't own. You see? So now there's collection, and I don't know. I did share with you my children's nature collection, and I wasn't sure what I was doing today. And so these are my kids' nature documentation books when they were kids. My kids would do is they would collect based on their talent that they were developing. So, for instance, Catherine collected pictures of horses, drawings that she would make. She ended up collecting drawings of horses. And I showed you her book. This is her horse notebook that she made. It has several sections in it. She started drawing when she was quite young, but this book was put together when she was 15. And all of that, this is her own work. She learned all the parts of the horse, and she did all of these drawings learning the parts of a horse. This is before she ever had a horse or ever was even around a horse. So I showed you a bunch of these drawings last week. And so she has the actual information about horses, and then she has a section of drawings on foals, and she has a section on action, horses in action. And these are all drawings that she did. A section on horse heads, horse breeds. I'll just show you this one, horse breeds. There, just a little bit there. I guess there's more, but, and there's a section on famous horses, with their names, horse heads, just famous horses that she knew of, and then horse gear, like the bit and the saddle and things like that. The drawings that she did. So, actually, at the time that she made that, I was kind of wanting her to prove her interest in horses, because we knew that it was going to be a very expensive interest that we really couldn't afford to do. We didn't live in a permanent place of our own, and things like that. And so it would be a while before she could actually own a horse. It was, let me see, she was 19, I think. She was 18 when she got to go work in a horse stable for the first time for about a year and a half before we bought property, and she was able to get her first horse, a baby horse, right after it was born. She was able to purchase her own horse with her own money, and raise it for, I'm forgetting now when she needed to sell her horse. It was probably about 10 years ago. So she had it for a long time. But anyway, I wanted her to prove her interest, and she did so by tons of research and reading and understanding the care of horses and knowing all about them as much as she could without ever really being able to be around them. And then a year and a half working in the horse stables before she was able to actually get her first horse. So anyway, that her way of collecting, I gave her horse subscriptions to magazines that she read thoroughly for several years before she ever owned a horse. Dad took her to horse auctions and to horse shows just to get into the horse world to be in that world and to learn more that way. And that wasn't a frequent, but they did go several times to things like that, horse shows and horse auctions, so that she could see how things were done. Just one of the ways that we helped her with an interest that she had. All right. So now there's collecting. We just finished with collecting, and now I want to go, and if you have any questions, just to my memory might be triggered on some other things. If you have questions about collections, I'm going to go on to reality-based notebook records. See, these are real life activities. I hope that you can see that. These are real life activities that you can draw from, just really build on real life instead of viewing it as just this extra thing while you're over here figuring out education for your children. Just build on real life. So let's talk about reality-based notebook records. And first, I want to define a notebook. A notebook can take on many different forms and sizes, utilizing a variety of bindings and materials in its construction. The only quality that remains consistent between notebooks is that each will contain blank pages, giving the user complete freedom of design and expression. The habit of producing notebooks rather than consuming workbooks will train our children to become self-governed students and writers who then will have something to share with others. Now, think about this. We're thinking about real life activities, right? Nobody carries around a workbook in real life. It's not how you learn. People use notebooks for all sorts of recording activities, okay? No other learning tool has more purity of approach than a blank notebook. Like the artist's canvas, it has a creative potential of becoming anything that the author wishes to portray. So here's some basic supplies for the notebook method: a variety of paper and cardstock, supply of notebook binders with clear plastic front pockets, different widths of binders. For instance, this 1-inch binder is really the most popular. It's the one that my kids used the most. However, each of them have one that's just 1/2 inch that they made. And then Catherine has a 3-inch that she made, which was the bird book. But that was the only one that was made in a huge volume like that. All the others were just 1-inch. And then you need that top-loading sheet protectors for the notebooks. And then you want composition books of all sizes, and they can be personalized with a contact paper cover. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. These are just composition books, okay? This was one of the display models that I had in my meetings, and just to show a page of one of the copybooks, Catherine's copybook. And this is just handwriting practice and copying, just copy work. That's what this is. It's just a copybook. Now my kids filled several of these, and I'll get into that in another message. When we go into expanding on the notebooks, the 6 categories or applications of notebook recording. But here we covered with contact paper. Catherine's were pink, and John's I had just a different kind of paper for his. And so you can personalize them that way. The first ones we did, we just kept plain, and then the next ones we covered them. It was just fun to personalize them. And then you also want blank journals to keep on hand. I had made up a bunch of these. They're all different sizes. Oh my goodness. My grandkids have gone through so many of these little booklets, and they're just blank pieces of paper on the inside, so they can create their own little see, they're not big, but they can create their own little stories or picture book, whatever it is that they're wanting to do. And so kids just like to make books, or have a book to fill in, to make something they're interested in. So those are your basic supplies for notebooks. Instead of investing your resources in toys and entertainment or expensive curriculum, begin to take on a mindset of acquiring useful supplies and tools that will help your family become skillful at something. Now, because we had a bookmaking business, we had tools for making books. We had a comb binder, we had paper cutters, and we had a long arm stapler. And so the kids could actually make their books look good that way. We had a laminator, and we laminated a lot of things that our kids wanted to keep, or that, I used for displays. I laminated things. There's just lots of things that you can have on hand. You want a hole puncher for copy paper that you're wanting to put in a notebook, or you can put them in the plastic sleeves that way. So you just want it, and you want your kids to have real tools as well. And so we learned to invest in real art supplies for Catherine, and a drawing table, and lighting for her artwork. We invested in, we helped John with his coin collecting that he was very interested in, and some of the supplies that he needed for that. I believe that he bought his own safe. John bought his own tools for yard work, his own lawnmower, and his own weed eater. I'm trying to remember all the things, because Catherine bought her own horse, but we supplied them during birthdays and Christmases with lots of other tools and books and things that they really wanted to make learning easier, because I could waste money on curriculum and it would never get used again. It doesn't go with you, you see, but tools go with you. They go with you. You want real tools. You want your kids to have real tools. Many productive and creative learning opportunities will await your family when your home is filled with tools instead of just empty toys. Now, there's nothing wrong with toys. My grandkids, I think, have way too many. But we really limited toys. And I think my kids have worked really hard to reduce toys in their lives as well for their children. Quality art supplies and science-related tools, microscope, globe, those sorts of things that the kids really want would help to encourage your children in their creative bents. Sometimes science-related kits that are sophisticated enough that they actually do something. Sometimes building kits are really helpful. Boys really love woodworking tools or mechanics tools. My grandsons have all these electric, battery operated vehicles that grandma has given them. And another one is coming pretty soon too. Another birthday coming up pretty soon. Anyway, and they just love driving these things around the yard. And they require battery hookups. Oh, little Teddy, he just loves driving this little John Deere pickup truck. And the battery will die, and he comes running in to get Grandpa to come and hook up the battery. And he's just, what is he? 4. He's just 4. And almost 4, I think, or he just turned 4. I'm forgetting. No, he's almost 4. And he comes running in and asking Grandpa to hook up the battery for the John Deere because he had to stop driving it. And he is impatient. It needs to be done right then, you see, because he was right in the middle of doing something. And they go around the yard picking things up and putting it in the back of their little dump truck. And it's so cute watching them drive that thing around. 2 little bodies sitting in this thing, driving it around. It's so precious. I love watching them. You know, I have pictures of Jesse and Sean and all the boys. They have Grandpa's tools out from his shop, his mechanic tools for the cars, you know. And they got Grandpa's ramp for putting the car up on, the wheel up on the ramp, so Grandpa could get down under it to look at something. They've got this John Deere sitting up on the ramp, and all the boys are surrounding it with tools in their hands, getting underneath it and going down inside under the steering wheel and pretending to fix things on this John Deere. It's so cute. They are very serious in their play, and it's just adorable. And I've got to find those pictures so I can show them to you. I didn't know that was going to come up, but it was really cute. And so eventually they get their own tools, and they work with daddies, or Grandpa, watching how they do their car work. And so they end up, I've got a bunch of boys, you see, and we have 7 here living on the property, but one is just barely starting to toddle. And so 6 of them are playing around on the property all the time and doing all these kinds of activities. So anyway, go back to tools. Get tools to go the distance with your kids, something that they can learn and grow with, okay? So I was supposed to show you the chart of the contrast between using notebooks versus workbooks. And this is called Notebook Methodology Contrasted with Workbooks. And so I am going to, and I think that I've given you enough on that, but I'm going to read down this because workbooks, you're answering true or false, or you filling in the blanks, or multiple choice. But in notebooks, you're using complete sentences as a means to express original thoughts. You're using your own thoughts. And in a workbook, the child only needs to react to selected and controlled external content, methods, and demands. But in a notebook, the child exercises response, memory, and reasoning, reflecting and thinking upon what is within himself. So it's much harder, it's more work. But there's development that comes along with that, you see. In a workbook, the demands little of teachers and less of students in the way of scholarship and use of learning tools and mastery of subject material. Whereas in a notebook, it requires productivity, individuality of content, purpose, and goals. In a workbook is reactive, mechanical, sterile, artificial, consumptive, as in using up a book produced by another, an expression of the teacher or curriculum writer. Whereas in a notebook, it's reflective, Individual, creative, real, living, productive, as in creating and producing a living book, an expression of the child, the student. In a workbook, the control is from without, as in a packaged curriculum and rigid requirements. But in a notebook, the government is from within. It's self-government, making opportunity for the parent or the teacher to minister to the child. Because, why is that? Because you're needing to train your children in self-government. You see? And so there's training opportunity there. In workbooks, content is dictated by the hidden agendas found in prepackaged curriculums, and the progress is measured by memory capability. But in a notebook, content is decided by the beliefs, goals, and ideals of the parents who take into consideration the special needs and uniquenesses of each child, and the progress is measured by obedience to standards set by the parent. Improvement is demonstrated in skill work, and self-government is exercised by the student. So isn't that wonderful? It's a direct contrast, between a workbook and a textbook. So the natural form of a blank notebook makes it adaptable to any task or learning situation. The content, rather than being dictated by a preset curriculum, is determined by the family, meeting their unique and individual needs. And when the development of learning tools becomes the focus rather than merely gaining content, then the family is free to use all of life as their curriculum. You see that? All of life is the curriculum. Furthermore, the notebook is adaptable to all types of learners and possesses much visual aid and has multi-dimensional potential. I was helping a young man here recently in our community, and he was over and he was taking notes of things I was saying to him, and I noticed that his notebook had half lines and half blank paper. And I said, well, why do you have a notebook like that? He was taking notes on the bottom half where the lines were. He says, well, because I like to draw and sketch some of the things that I'm thinking about, whatever the notes are. And so he was showing me some of his pictures in his journal. It was really clever. And this young man is in his early 20s. He's in his early to mid 20s, and here he had adapted the notebook methodology to his peculiar style of journaling. Isn't that wonderful? So that the notebook is adaptable to all types of learners. Little Sean, he's 11 now, and he's come in a couple times in the last couple years asking for a notebook, because he knows I have a huge supply of blank books in a drawer in my office that I just keep on hand, and they're from everywhere from tiny to big, all sizes of books for whatever I might need or somebody in the family might need. I've got notebooks, and so I would let him go through them for something that he wanted, a little field pocket book that he could carry in his pocket with a little pencil and have on hand for whatever it was that he was working on while he's outside, whatever the interests happened to be in that at that time. And so, the kids are trained to use notebooks, and you want them to be trained that way because it's real life. Notebooks are real life. That's the way that, in fact, George Washington was famous for his notebooks. He journaled daily, and he kept records in notebooks every day of his life, everything that he did, the work that he did. He was the one that probably is about the age of 14. He was surveying the state of West Virginia. He was hired to do that. And he did a lot of notebook recording in order to do that. You see, and that's what they did back then. They recorded on notebook paper. Of course, today you might have an iPad and you take that with you and you would document things that way. There's nothing wrong with that either. I'm going to say one thing about that though. I would like to see the kids learn how to write. I really would. You can sure tell homeschool kids who weren't made to write because they were on technology so much instead. Makes them look really young. The handwriting hasn't matured. So get your kids writing, okay? Okay, moms? Get your kids doing lots of handwriting. There's nothing wrong with knowing how to do lots of handwriting. You want their handwriting to look mature. Not like an 8-year-old, okay? When they're 20 years old, you want their handwriting to be fluid and they know how to write. So the notebook can consist of writings, illustrations, photographs, and bits and pieces of any flat object. And rather than cloning our children's education, notebooks can reflect the interests, the individuality, and strengths of each child. Now, later on in these messages, I'll present a more thorough discussion of the practical dynamics regarding the use and implementation of notebooks for skill work, and that will be in the next video. We're going to go into expanding on the 6 applications of notebook records under reality-based notebook recording, okay, on that chart. What were the 6 categories? I'll just tell you what they are right now. Skill work for reading and writing, and those are those composition books I was showing you. Booklet building, records of collections, records of projects, records of written work, and unit of life book projects like Catherine's Bird Book and Horse Book. Okay? So there's 6 kinds, and everything that you would want in real life can come under that category. And I'll show those categories, or those applications. I'll show that to you next time. So before recording the concrete events and abstract ideas learned through a study of history, the Bible, or a piece of literature like you would be doing in school, recording in a child's early years should begin with the documentation of his own life's events and spiritual lessons, something he can connect to, something that makes sense to him. It's real to him. It's relative to his life and where he's at, what he's connected to in everyday life. Life is full of opportunity to put pen and pencil to paper and document a memory or a lesson learned. The events that are taking place every day have enough educational value and potential in themselves to be worthy of note. So we need to stop wasting our children's personal interests for the sake of artificial and contrived learning activities designed especially for their education. What we need is to see the true value in our children's activities through a daily recording habit during the formative years. And this would prepare them well for the more serious study of subjects, recording and journaling of their abstract ideas later in adolescence. And they'll become comfortable with notebook usage and will begin to acquire an ability to draw out of themselves not only a chronicle of events or description of projects, but also the more abstract and personal spiritual lessons learned through the process. So the habit of producing notebooks rather than consuming workbooks will train children to become self-governed students and writers who then will have something to share with others. And there's such a variety of applications. You know, the notebook method is just a catch-all term that I use for the many diverse applications possible within its methodology. So in a nutshell, the notebook method is a tool you can use to channel your children's learning through an avenue other than prepared and pre-digested curriculum. So one way to view the notebook method is in this analogy offered by Barbara Shelton. Imagine a nice roomy basket, and we'll call this the notebook method basket. Nestled inside is a collection of eggs, much like a varied assortment of lovely handcrafted Easter eggs, created by many different processes and techniques. And these represent the various applications of the notebook method, each one being unique in purpose and design. You could keep a drawer full of or shelf of extra notebooks, blank books for your children, just like what she's describing here. A family life will provide many informal learning opportunities and reality-based ideas for the keeping of notebook records. However, most notebooks will fall into the 6 categories like I just got through listing for you. And they provide a step ladder for you to help guide and direct your children into a more mature application of the learning tools. And so these applications are fully described and personal examples are given later, but I just got to going through them. And I think I'm going to give you the ages of those. The skill works, that reading and writing, that's from 2 to 12 years old. And that is for learning to read, spell, do manuscript writing, and cursive writing practice, copy work. That's what those are for, the skill work. Then the second one, booklet building, is from 2 to 12 years old. Records of collections, 2 to 14 years old. Records of written work is 7 to 14 years old. Records of projects is 7 to 14 years old. And then the Unit of Life book project is 14 to 18 years old. Okay, and we will go into them next time individually. And I'll show you lots of examples from my own kids' learning experiences so that you'll have a good idea of what all of these can look like. Now let's talk about simple related projects. So here's some raw material you want to have on hand for children. You want them to have free access to a scrap wood pile and related tools, okay? If the child is too young for tools, give them a roll of duct tape, okay? They will use duct tape to put everything together. If it's paper or cardboard, give them masking tape. Colored masking tape works for making lots of really pretty things, or masking tape and Scotch tape, whatever tape you have, even electrical tape. John used to use electrical tape to hold metal parts together. A roll of chicken wire works for things, cardboard boxes, milk cartons, and milk jugs. Lots of duct tape, masking tape, and Scotch tape and electrical tape, okay? So raw materials for projects. Projects will surface most often through the simple daily process of concrete activities doing the stuff of real life. The child needs many daily opportunities to explore, to search, and discover for himself the environment in which he lives. The concrete operations of building, creating, experimenting, and exploring will challenge your child's mind. And when faced with obstacles, they must search for solutions to the problems. So when your child is allowed to develop and perfect his own designs, then what results is progressive mental development, which sets the stage for stronger abstract thinking skills later in adolescence. And so when encouraged at a young age, children love all kinds of hands-on projects. Simple projects related to their delight-directed pursuits would include writing projects such as booklets and instruction sheets, building displays for their collections made from cardboard or wood, photography, and creating with any medium such as clay, drawing, painting, or stitchery. And there are many ways to incorporate a delight in nature and a nature collection into more academic pursuits through simple hands-on projects. So listed below are a few nature-related projects to spring from, but remember that children themselves have a natural tendency to discover many avenues of expression when encouraged. So, writing projects. Ideas for writing projects can include coloring books with captions, comic books, comic strips. My kids did comic strips. I know somebody right now who's doing a comic strip. One of my grandsons. Brief stories about the child's true adventures with nature is something my daughter did. Instruction sheets about how to care for a critter. My daughter did those. John eventually did instruction sheets himself as he was older, but they were more mechanical, about mechanical projects that he made. Buds to Blossoms book, a friend did that one. That would be like a life cycle of plant life. It sounds to me like that's something that Jack would do. In fact, he did do one. He's done life cycles. In fact, at Easter, it was so funny. Because he was so into the life cycles and drawing the life cycle, because there's 5 stages of the life cycle of a plant. And so Easter time, resurrection, he came down and he said, Grandma, I drew the life cycle of Jesus. He's 5. Okay, remember, he's 5. And it was so sweet. I said, please, show me your drawings. So he went back up and got the drawings to show me the life cycle of Jesus. It was so precious. He had the whole cycle of Christ's life to the resurrection, from the cradle to the resurrection. One picture on each page. He drew the life cycle of Jesus. Never thought of it in those terms before, but he'd been doing life cycle. He knows the life cycle of the mushrooms and the flowers, and he absolutely loves flowers and mushrooms. He loves the beauty of flowers. He's always looking to see what new flowers I have so he can snag a couple blooms and take them upstairs. He loves flowers. He loves the gardening, and he helps Mommy in the garden. So Buds to Blossoms book, or a book of drawings of trees with actual leaves on the same page, pressed under a square of clear contact paper. Or, you know what we did, that's not even in here, but what I had my kids do is we had wax paper, and we would put like a maple leaf between 2 sheets of wax paper, shave with a little knife, just take some shavings off a crayon, of a pretty colored crayon, and sprinkle them all over the leaf and the wax paper, and then we would iron the 2 sheets of with the leaf in the middle and the crayon drips, you know, between 2 sheets of wax paper, and make a really pretty picture, and then cut it in a, you know, a nice shape, and just a little work of art. I did that with my kids when they were little. Anyway, so there's some different things, just some ideas. Now for building projects that require carpentry tools and wood scraps fall into this category. My kids built a rough photo blind from which to photograph wild animal activity. That's an easy thing to make, that they could fit in standing up. Other ideas that are meaningful to children are pet houses and pens, or bird houses and bird feeders, building projects. And then these are just a few ideas. And then displays. Kids like to make displays. And so there's mounting, labeling, and displaying. A nature collection gives ample opportunity to not only increase the delight, but to bring it into a more detailed, thoughtful form. So I have my kids' nature display in my house. But Sean has developed his own. So they've got one up in their living room now, going on a brand new nature display for their family, which is just fun to watch develop. Photography, there's many things that can't be physically collected, such as sea life, active beehives, and animals. Photos can serve as memory aids as well as becoming the raw material for a booklet, story with captions, or a memory booklet of an event. And this is what we did. My kids, we took pictures of sea life, and you know, on the beach, we had some things that we allowed them to collect, and others that we insisted that they take a picture of, and they would have to leave there. Active beehives, we do have some beehives in the collection that were abandoned old beehives that the kids would find. We have footprints, animal footprints that they collected in plaster casts. Photos work when nothing else works. And there's other mediums of expression like drawing, painting, stitchery, and clay. Then they can be used for diagrams, models, and step-by-step instructions. You know, my daughter was really into clay, and I'd forgotten to mention that last week. She did a lot of drawing and art, but she also did some clay art. And this is something that she had made for me, and I just found it the other day. So I put it on my shelf. Let me see. I know her name is on there, Catherine. 96. Yeah. 1996. She made that. So what does that mean? I don't know how old she was. She was 23 when she made that for me. I have other pieces that are older than that need mending because clay doesn't always last very long. Anyway, so there's lots of different ways to express an interest depending on what the interest is. So remember to develop a well-rounded informal learning process using all 4 study models. And if your kids, children do lots of crafts, they will go into doing more, projects that require more skill development, like the clay. If they do lots of Play-Doh, they'll move into clay. If they're doing building with cardboard, they'll move into, building with wood or whatever it is that that they're interested in. My kids, I've shown you different things in different videos. They did their own hand stitching and made their own puppets. And then Catherine went into making some clothes of her own. She made dolls for Catherine and John to play with. Toy dog, toy, creatures that they were interested in their make-believe world that they created. They made clothes for all of her Breyer horses, different things because they would play horses, things like that when they were little. And then eventually she went into making more clothing, kinds of things with her stitching ability on the sewing machine. But the kids learned how to sew. In fact, John learned how to mend all of his own clothes by hand and still does that today. He had a little kit, survival kit that he made out of jeans fabric. He made a little pouch that he attached to his belt, and he wore that thing for years. It had little survival things in it, tools, and including a stitching kit. And he carried that with him for years, used it all the time. And then eventually he got tired of it being on his hip and took it off. But you see, the kids just go on and on and on and on with lots of different activities and learning how to do things. So now we've looked at all 4 of the learning activities, and then what we're going to be developing more fully next time is the recording aspect, which is the 6 applications of notebook records. Remember to use the less complex notebook applications in early childhood and then progress to the more complex unit of life book projects as your child's ability and interests mature. If children have been engaged throughout childhood in a delight-directed process utilizing all 4 learning activities, they're ready at adolescence to cross a bridge into more formal applications, which you can see going down the page of the Lifestyle of Learning framework of seasons. Because of formal comes after the informal. You see, there's informal and formal. And in each stage, there will be more a graduating, a more formal activity. Reading, journaling, Bible study, casual topical Bible study, and then in-depth word Bible study. Those are the activities of the formal models, and we can talk about those another time. But there's a bridge. You see this notebook projects, the big notebooks, they create a bridge which will prepare your student for more formal studies. And what I've been describing here is actually simple. All mom needs to do is perceive an existing interest in her children and help ignite it and encourage the pursuit of discovery by validating it, providing books, related resources, and materials for your children to delve into. And then you begin to encourage a collection of concrete raw material relative to the subject of interest, or photography, photos of it, whatever it is that's needed in order to collect knowledge of this subject. And then simultaneously, you'll encourage the collection of raw data or knowledge pertaining to the topic of interest. And this activity will be channeled into notebook recording of some sort. And so the dual purpose of recording is repetition, which will bring memory retention and the development of the language learning skills. And as discovery unfolds, mom may suggest simple related projects for the child to do on his own if he is not already initiating them himself. It is important that your child does for himself as much of the activity as possible. A young child will need guidance and help, but gear activities to his ability level so he can begin a habit of independence and resourcefulness. And this will ultimately lead him to observe his own development as his projects take on more complexity. So remember that our tendency is to view a child's elementary activity or a child's play as something to grow him out of as fast as possible and to move him toward activities that look more academically acceptable to our school senses. But this is a mistake, moms. Don't think this way. This is why we think nothing of robbing children of their childhood when we put them into school at such tender ages. We find it hard to believe that if we allow our children to fully experience their childhood years, that 6 years down the road, they will not still be doing the same elementary things, not growing, not learning, and not developing skills and acquiring knowledge. We can't even envision child's play becoming transformed into a mature ability to learn anything. Thus, the product of education must look mature right now. Its form and appearance must look more acceptable to us right now. We don't understand the benefits to our children of keeping them close to us throughout childhood. We think playing is all they will be doing. Their play is their learning. Knowledge and understanding of lifestyle learning principles and models will free your understanding to encourage your children all the way with their interests in play, giving them a well-rounded learning experience in the elementary stages. A knowledge of self-governed principles as sewed into your children's lives makes it possible to look by faith at the potential mature fruit of developed learning ability and product of education that you all desire. So become free by the renewal of your mind to a healthy concept of education and allow your children to explore child's play. Let them learn. Release your children to learn. Amen. Right, ladies? Release them to learn. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. So if you have any further questions about any of this, please post them. I'm basically going by script here. It says, my girls have a lot of dolls, but I love seeing how they have been inspired to learn to sew doll clothes or make an ice cream stand out of a cardboard box, or even make salt dough food for their dolls. Oh, that's clever. They set up scenes and use maps to plan trips for their dolls. My girls play together like this for hours. That sounds so creative. That's really fun. That is really, really fun. Yeah, you know, I made my own doll clothes. Do you know that I grew up in the 50s, and the Barbie doll came out when I was a girl, and there was only one kind, and she had brown hair, you know, dark hair, black hair, I think it was. And my sister and I got Barbie dolls, and probably when we were 11, 12, maybe 11 or 12 is when they came out. And we made all of our doll clothes, Barbie doll clothes. We made them all. There wasn't any such thing as going to the store and buying doll clothes. I think it came with the outfit it had on, the dress it had on, and then you made everything else. And that's what we did. And I'd give her doll clothes for her birthday, and she would give me doll clothes for my birthday. Clothes that we made for each other's dolls. Isn't that funny? She says she has an attic full of cardboard boxes because your 10-year-old son loves to build piñatas for your whole family's birthday parties. How fun is that? Oh, that's such a contribution too. I love that. You're asking, you want to do this lifestyle learning with your 12, 10, and 4, and you're curious how you get the more complex mathematics included in this. We're talking about the language learning tools. That's what we're talking about in this entire. If you go through the previous videos, you will see that we are talking about the lifestyle learning framework, which is 4 seasons, and it gives, it's all about developing the language learning tools. And that doesn't mean that you don't do math. Math is a subject to be learned. The language learning tools are tools to be developed. They're not a subject to learn. You see, subjects to learn are the raw material on which to use the learning tools. In order to learn math, there's a certain amount of reading and writing that needs to happen, correct? Those are language learning tools. Math is a separate subject that you do on the side of that. So I'm not covering math in these videos. It's a subject to learn. You're going to want your kids to know arithmetic. You want them to know how to add, subtract, divide, and multiply, and whatever else that you're wanting them to learn. And so measuring and that sort of thing. And in real life, they can measure all sorts of things. In everyday activity, they learn how to measure. But adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, those are the operations of arithmetic that you want them to know how to do. And you will do that through whatever means that you use to teach it to them. Okay, whatever curriculum that you choose to use. Now, I had math curriculum, arithmetic books for my kids. But for drill, I think they really loved the drill. We did timings, and they loved the drill of timings. Okay, so you can, And then you said get the more complex mathematics included. Well, the complex mathematics, by the time that they're older, they can teach themselves if you've taught them how to learn. Okay. Oh, good. I'm glad that's helpful, Mandy. Good. All right. So, ladies, I think that's all for today. Your family's lifestyle interests, your children's interests, you can bring to the table. Now, caution, I did not bring everything my kids did to the table for notebook records or for formalizing their interests, because there were too many interests. They had so many interests they delved into, and I just couldn't. There wasn't enough time to record everything, because we wouldn't have time to do real life if we were trying to record everything that they were doing. So I had to pick and choose which activities needed to be brought to the table, and you will too. A lot of the activities that they were involved in, they would do on their own, some of their own recording things that they did, things that they would do on their own. But I didn't have to formalize everything that they did on their own. You see, the idea isn't to get everything recorded. The idea is to develop the skills so that they can move on and do more if they choose to do more. That they can do more advanced recording, that they can do more advanced writing and composition, that they'll be able to do more advanced research. They'll be able to think right about life, and they'll be able to pursue learning subjects that relate to who they are and their chosen path in life, their chosen vocation, you see? And so the idea is to get the learning tools well formed in your children. Everything doesn't have to be documented, but enough needs to be documented so that their learning tools are well used and expressed in mature forms, okay? And if they're being expressed informally, they will learn how to express them formally as well, and they won't shy away from it when it's time to advance those skill applications. You see, they'll be able to have more mature expressions of every learning tool, and their projects will be more advanced, and their skills will be more advanced. Their talents will be more well developed, you see. So the idea isn't just to recording for recording's sake alone, and to do all the recording, everything recorded. That's not the idea. The idea is to develop skills. And so you'll have these 4 activities: the reading, the research, the collecting, the recording, and the projects. You might have an interest that only is expressed through 2 of those activities, and then a child might have an interest where the other 2 activities are being expressed more predominantly. There might be 1 or 2 interests where all 4 of those activities are being expressed simultaneously, and so you don't need every interest to be expressed through all 4 of those activities all the time. What you need is you want a well-rounded learning experience where the kids know how to express their interest in all 4 activities, but not necessarily all 4 of them in every interest. I hope I'm making myself clear there. But they need to be able to do all 4 and become skilled at all 4 of the informal learning activities. Because if they can do that, they are being provided a well-rounded learning experience that develops lots of really good skills in your children. I've got a highly skilled family, highly skilled. It's crazy how skilled my family is. And the children, how the children are being raised to become skilled in lots of ways. You see, and you're wanting your kids to be skilled because they need to be able to make a living one day. And you want them skilled even in their areas of weakness so that they know how to overcome and do things if they have to do them, not necessarily just want to do them, but they learn how to do things because they might need to, learn how to do certain things. And so there's just some skills you just want your kids to have. And so you want them to have this well-rounded experience of skill development. You want them to have a well-rounded use of all the language learning tools. You want them to know how to do hands-on projects. You want them to know how to write. You want them to know how to read books and lots of reference work. You want them to know how to take care of a collection and document a collection and put a book together and put things together, you see? And you want them to know how to relate a real life need to what does that look like? A real life need. How do I meet a real life need? You want them to be able to do that. Know how to meet real life needs. So there's lots and lots of skills that your children are developing. And so I want you to be encouraged, dear hearts, to free your children and take on a broader mindset of what real life can provide for your family, because it really is rich to provide many, many quality learning experiences for your family. All right, dear hearts, I'm going to let you go, and I will see you in 2 weeks with another video, and we will go into 6 applications of notebook recording. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're seeing this, ladies, later on YouTube, please make comments for me. Let me know how you're enjoying these videos, and I will see you soon. God bless your efforts. Remember to go love on those precious kiddos today. They're very dear to the Lord. Bye-bye, ladies.